My name is Rich Carlton. I'm the president of our organization, and I'm here to talk to you today about cutting through the hype to get to true business value from data analytics. Part of the reason that we do this and do these types of talks at different universities is because our business is experiencing some pretty significant growth, and that growth is going to only be limited by our ability to retain, develop, and grow talent. We are a South Bend, Indiana-based business and have been able to capitalize initially on a lot of resources outside at the University of Notre Dame, and that is now expanding dramatically throughout the state. I'm going to be giving the same talk today, not only to students that are in the computer science program or data science program, but also over at the Kelley School of Business, of which I'm a graduate of. And it's interesting that I can give the same talk because we refer to them in our organization as the business and the tech side. And the part that I'm trying to emphasize to you and where I want to make it a valuable day for you is the more that you can connect yourself to both sides and understand that they are completely intertwined, whether your passion is data science, whether your passion is infrastructure, whether your passion is business analysis side or the algorithm development, it's an assembly line process in many, many ways to get to true business value. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a view of who we are. We're going to talk to you about how we talk to organizations and the organizations that we've worked with, many of which are global in size, and their analytics journey. We'll hit to actionable insights and really getting to what we call data-driven decision making. And then once we set that foundation, then we'll get in and we'll talk about the how and the ways that we accomplish it and the pitfalls that we found when you get to trying to really drive an analytics program the way we do that becomes the heart of an organization. Obviously, security and compliance is going to be huge, and then we'll take you through a few case studies to really help you understand what we're trying to accomplish. So, my title is President and COO of an organization called Data Realty. Data Realty is a parent company for 3 separate organizations. My partners and I grew up in the data center business, and it was always about storing and protecting data. As I mentioned to the professor when I graduated here, had a degree in business and computer and information systems, had some COBOL training and some C and C++, but it was all about, for me, business development and getting into entrepreneurial-based ventures, and that led to the data center business. So as we've been storing and protecting data for years from companies around the globe that bring data back to our facilities, it became very apparent about 4 or 5 years ago that more and more organizations were going to be looking to do something with this data that they were storing and protecting. And at that point in time, we had a very strong relationship with a professor at the University of Notre Dame who had a real vision and was churning out some PhD students and others, and a vision for algorithm creation and data science. And we started a company called Analytics. Analytics, for those of you that have forgotten high school chemistry, the AU is the symbol for gold. That was the original thought. Your data's gold. Reminding that is a little corny, a little cheesy, but that's what has kind of stuck. And our organization has continued to expand and now have a cloud hosting and managed services business. So our game plan is that the data center and the cloud hosting are data aggregators, and they're differentiated by the fact that we can take all this data and turning it into something meaningful for your organization. So I'm here today to talk to you about analytics and the things that they do. So Analytics as a software and services company is how we started. And so it's going to be strange because you're going to hear me talk a lot about the business when at our core we are really a software and technology company. But those are what you have to do to enable to get to the business value. So we focus on very specific business objectives in enterprise and consumer intelligence. And the backbone of all that is an end-to-end cloud-based data management and analytics platform that we call OnSite. Combination of hardware, software that we'll go through, and it manages and automates the ingestion, the compute resources, the data set creation, and accelerated data interaction to allow our customers to get rapidly to business insights. And so when we talk about our organization, the value proposition that we bring is that we connect to the business and we look for indisputable value, business value that can be measured from data. The differentiator that we have is we find that we're one of the only places in the country that can take you all the way from infrastructure to insights in an automated fashion and not need a whole lot of third-party intervention, which allows us to get organizations there year or 2 years ahead of schedule in many cases. What we have found to gain those insights in a meaningful way, it's a variety of roles. And while I know many of you that are listening in online are in the data science program or computer science program, what we have found is that any of our project teams, on every single one of our projects, it started with, I'll be honest with you, with just data scientists. And that was our thought, was that we were going to have this data science group, and hey, we've got some data over here, and companies around the globe were going to be putting up Hadoop infrastructures, and we were going to be the smart people who could come in and help them. And we found massive disconnects along that process. And so as we took on more and more of that ourselves, what we find is it is key to have infrastructure engineers, because the type of data that you're talking about, whether it's in-house data, cloud data, machine-based data, which we're getting massive amounts of these days, result in very different designs of infrastructure, from Hadoop to container-based computing to others and resources that you need to be able to manage that. Our data engineers are the people that work with our team to be able to look at what we're trying to get as an output and a result, and how do I link and cleanse and bring these disparate data sources together in some meaningful way. The software developers are not only developing our own code to be able to help link and automate this process, but also the UI developers to really put it in the hands of people that they can do something with. We originally didn't start out with business analysts. We thought our customers would have that. But we found over time that we really needed to make an investment in how to connect the insights from the data into what the business application was. And then our PhD level data scientists is where we started with. We've got a lot more masters now, and we're driving that down into other roles. But we sprinkle data science throughout every team and everything that we do, closely connected to the customer with a foundation around security and compliance. If you have a breach, you are out of business in a hurry. And so what we have found is anybody who's missing any of these parts in some way, shape, or form is either taking a whole lot longer to get to insights, or they're not getting there at all. And so this is the way that our teams work together. As I mentioned, we started with some folks from the University of Notre Dame, and the vision was in South Bend, which is a northern Indiana-based town. We had a whole lot of bright people that came into our community that went to Notre Dame and then left. And we had some really bright people who came to places like IU and left and didn't come back. And so our view was, could we create something that kept some of those people in town to stay and made others come back? And it started with Notre Dame talent, and many of them from IU and others that we started to bring back. And now what we've seen over the 3-4 years that we're doing this, up over 100 employees that do nothing but focus on data. We've now been able to attract people to our region from MIT and Cal Berkeley and Carnegie Mellon and Stanford and Michigan State and Gonzaga and others, because the work is so exciting and it's so challenging, and it's in a part of the country where you can have a great quality of life. And my standard joke when I do this talk around the country, being an IU grad, is that you can see we're filling up with talent, and one day we may get desperate enough to hire a Purdue grad, but it hasn't happened yet. So far we're not there. Customer base is broad in size, with global organizations like Whirlpool and Scripps and others, but it's a very exciting mix of challenges that we're solving in the business side of healthcare, in the supply chain, and a whole lot with media and consumer-based organizations. So let's talk about the analytics journey that we take customers through. And the thing that, as you get out in the workforce and really try and apply what you've learned here, is getting people to understand that it is a journey and it is a process. And the most successful organizations that are utilizing it are focusing on the why. Before you get into it, we have a lot of organizations that have said, hey, our initial projects in data analytics is we want to spend a whole bunch of money on Hadoop and create a team and just create a great big data lake, and then we're going to see what we can do with the data. And you spend years doing that, and the people that are funding it are saying, what am I getting from it in the end on the business side? And the projects go away in a hurry. The why becomes, what is the strategic imperative? Why are we looking at this? What's the so what from the data that ties to some measurable outcome that the business is trying to achieve? How you're going to achieve that then is the combination of the people we talked about, the data itself that they have, maybe some that they don't have, some that they need to start collecting, the algorithms that are based off of the technology and the infrastructure that allows you to be able to process big data at scale in a truly meaningful way. And the what are the insights you get out of it, the action that somebody can take, and most of all, the value that can be created from the business because of it. And if you can tie your work to these things, knowing that there's going to be continuous improvement, because every time more data is introduced or people react in the marketplace in a certain way, the algorithms need to change, things need to adjust, and the insights need to be handled in a different way based off of market conditions. So, when we start to talk to companies about data analytics, this would have never been the way we would have started the first few years. We would have started conversations to talk about whether they're using a data warehouse or how they're handling ETL or how their data is structured and all these really fun, exciting things. Are you using R or Python or how are you doing things? And then we would have kind of got to, okay, well, what are you trying to accomplish? Instead, what has differentiated us and our data science team and our analysts is starting with saying, what are you as a business trying to accomplish? What are the global outcomes that are important to you? And so this is sampled from one of our customers that said, hey, next year we got to win against so-and-so, this competitor. We got to increase our market share. And we think the way that we're going to do it is to win the digital customer experience. From the time they come into our website to how they interact with us to when they buy, we need to be able to win that. It needs to be a great customer experience. And we need to be able to put timely data in the hands of our decision makers so we're serving up our marketing message to the right time at the right person. We're being judged by X% of net revenue growth. How do I upsell, cross-sell? How do I reduce my churn? And expanding the operating margin. And I can't tell you how often when we get in the room and you start to talk to people that are in data science for our customers or who are in IT or in analysis, and you start to ask them, how are you trying to tie it to the business? What are your business goals for this year? We get blank stares. And quite often, those people are the ones that are in the corner of the room with their heads down and maybe not in the room at decision-making time or at promotion time or at bonus time. It is in the room when we're talking to the thought leaders in technology that are saying, here's what our business is trying to do and how I'm trying to help drive that, are the ones that differentiate themselves in their career. It took us a while to get to this, and I can't stress to you enough how soon in your career you need to be thinking about how it ties to the business. And so what then do we decide to do? What projects, what solutions, how do we work on things? And what you're going to find is, I'm sure there's a whole lot of smart people listening in on this. And the challenge that you're going to have is the same challenge we have. There's a lot of shiny objects in analytics. Wow, this would be really cool. This would be really fun. This would be really exciting. We landed an initial project with Whirlpool Corporation a few years ago. And they have since become one of our largest customers. And we'll never forget the advice that the hiring manager, who was with their digital center of analytics, said as he was letting go other firms and bringing us in and giving us our first opportunity, is he said, every time you come into me, you better come with a so what. He said, so much in the past, somebody comes in and says, hey, we found this in the data and does this, this, and this. And he said, my standard question is, so what? How does it make us better, faster, smarter, cheaper? How do we act on it? How do we do something with it? And so those first few years in that relationship, we knew every time we went into a meeting where we had found some insights in the data or want to do it, there had to be a so what, how they could act on it. And over time, we've taken that simple so what, and we've driven it into how we look at what type of data analytics projects we work on, and we need to be able to answer these questions anytime we work on it. And the first one is it material? There's going to be a whole lot of areas that you can go into in data, but is it a material problem? Is it something that is big enough that if I spend time on this and I bring data to the solution, it's big enough that I can impact results? Second one is it measurable? And the reason this is anything that you do is going to take funding from the business side. It's going to take somebody who says, whether it's a research grant or whether it's the business saying, I want to continue to fund IT, if you can show it started at this, we took it to this, I measured this, I got improvement. If you can't figure out how to measure something through it, it's probably something you shouldn't be spending a lot of time on. This one's huge. Is it actionable? And we wasted a lot of time early in our business not necessarily thinking about how the insights that we would provide would be acted on. It's only going to drive value. It's kind of a nice to know unless somebody can take it and say, okay, now that I know this, I'm going to go do that. And I can go do that again and again and again. So you've got to think about how somebody, whether it's the physician, whether it's the marketing person, whoever it is going to take action off the data that you provide. And the last one is it scalable? Quite often we've seen mistakes made where somebody tries to swallow the ocean in one drink on the first project. And really what it needs to be is let's take a sample, a subset, work with the right champion, work with the right group to prove value here, and then it can scale within the organization or within the company. So is it material, measurable, actionable, scalable are the way that we look at whether or not a project should be taken on. So how do you decide then from there where to work on? So I talked about what those strategic goals were. We remember that one of them was we want to win against the competition by increasing market share by X. So with this particular customer, we took a look at it and they said, well, to do that, we think we need to increase in cross-sells. That led us to saying, wow, to increase in cross-sells, who are our current high-value customers? What's a potential high-value customer score? Somebody along that chain that we might be able to offer the right product at the right stage of their life because we know more about them based off who the high-value ones are. And what are the cross-sell opportunities by customer, by product, and how can I reduce churn? That made it measurable, scalable, actionable material because they've decided what to work on all the way through, and it ties to the business. Getting the data into the hands of decision makers then is another challenge. Organizations, as you will see as you get out there, are going to look at things in very different ways. I'm guessing many of the people on the phone here today would love to see it in a great big data set at command line and let me go to town. Let me go have some fun with that. And there's all kinds of people like that in organizations. But at the same time, there are people that are going to say, as I've got this snapshot across, give it to me in a web app. Give it to me in a dashboard. I've got to be able to take some action on it. And what we're particularly driving to is mobile. Everybody carries it with them. How do I really take insights, push it directly to somebody to where they can act on in near real time? So as you're thinking through the problems and the solutions you're working on, if you're thinking on the end result and how they're going to take action on it, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good if your desire is to increase the ability for a doctor to prescribe the right medication at the right time to minimize the cost to the patient based off their particular insurance plan, if your plan is to deliver it in a great big data set or a dashboard that the physician is going to have to go over and look at. It's not going to happen. So you got to think about how that person is going to act on the data best to be able to drive the maximum value to the organization. So we do the snapshots, we do the dashboards, we do the mobile app. So that operating model, as you get out and you're thinking about how do I add value and how do I start to talk about the way I'm going to be involved in an organization, comes from establishing an overall data strategy with analytics goals that are very much tied to business. From there, you're going to have to implement some type of platform to be able to handle the data that you need. You're going to have to bring in the aggregate sources, the BI modeling, and deliver those insights and measure it. That's the way we drive this total analytics model to the customers that we work with. So, now that we've talked a lot about the business side of it, and I can't emphasize enough to those of you that are on there, and I know you're thinking about finals right now, and you're thinking about all the things that you're learning in your computer science department. The folks that we have on our team and the folks that we interact with at our customer sites and the folks that we see that are getting the best jobs and are moving up the quickest are the people that have gained all the skills that you have but know why they're doing it. They know what the organization is trying to accomplish. They know when we're sitting in the room and we start to talk about goals, and we just had this with a large organization, and we had one particular individual in the room who all they wanted to talk about was new customer sales and how they wanted to do this really cool thing over here, and yet everything I had just read in the company's quarterly report said that they had done a massive amount of acquisitions, and the total goal that the CEO was going to the marketplace to try and get stock value from is we had to increase efficiency. We've acquired all these organizations, we've got to reduce costs, we've got to increase efficiency, where somebody over here was totally disconnected to what the business was trying to do. You've got to stay connected to what's trying to accomplish, and it'll make you the most valuable player in the room. So let's talk about the how. So the how for us has been a journey to get to that end to end. And we talk to every one of our customers about this, and we throw this slide up there. That 70% or more, according to Gartner, of analytics projects fail to meet the cost savings and revenue due to skill and integration challenges. And I'll be honest with you, our experience says that number is probably higher than 70%. What we have found in many of our companies, we're dealing with the second CIO, or the second or third business analyst, or the second or third person who was supposed to handle analytics. Because what happened is the people on the technology side got so bogged down in the tech and so bogged down in trying to figure out all of this that they lost sight of what the end result was. It's almost like you're telling somebody you're going to take them on this great vacation, and I know you got to build the plane, and all they want to do is go on a trip, and all you want to do is tell them about how the plane's going to get built. Okay? Give them a little taste. Get them there first. And so what we've seen is many of these fail because you get bogged down in the technology side. The funding goes away, and they don't see the measurable value because it was never tied to a business outcome in the first place. I can't tell you how many times, and this is one of the linchpins for us, though, to move on, where we talk to a customer in the IT segment, and we used to say, yeah, we'll do this, absolutely, because we had this hosted platform where they'd say, hey, we want to do a proof of concept on Hadoop. You know what, it's going to be faster. It doesn't really do anything for you beyond that. The proof of concept should be, how can I show that I reduce churn by 2% by able to do this, this, and this? Then you're going to get funding to do everything on the technology side that you want to do as long as it's connected. And so what our value proposition is, and our differentiator is right now, here's the landscape of people that are out there that are doing Hadoop in the cloud or on-premise or NoSQL databases and data integration work and cross-functional analytics and data access and applications and industry and storage and all this. And people are trying to say, my gosh, I've got to make heads or tails of all this. And our value prop is that we simplify this mess faster than anybody in the market. And what we have found, because we experienced it, was that there's a lot of disconnect between a lot of those technologies. And so whether you do it with us or on your own, what we talk to customers about is you're wanting to get to insights over here. To do that, you've got to ingest data. And that data's got to come from wherever it's created. Much of it is on-premise. Many of those clients have capitalized on cloud-based resources or software as a service where it doesn't even exist in their location. IoT and industrial IoT is creating massive amounts of data that hadn't even been thought about before. So I've got to ingest it in. And I've got to ingest it in a process that does it repeatedly without a lot of human intervention onto some type of infrastructure of storage and compute that can handle the resources that are there with the appropriate network and security. And I've got to be able to write data flows that I can end up bringing this data together in some way and do the calculations that I need. And I need to be able to explore it and interact with it and test it and hypothesize on it. And then once I get to something, a data set that proves some meaning or value, I need to be able to interact with it in some way that has some type of speed to where the user is having a positive experience and able to drive through some value. And then once I do it, I need to do it every single day or every single hour, depending on the nature of the problem, at scale. And so what we have found, and our benefit is that we have found that there's a lot of disconnects between a lot of these technologies. And so what we have ended up doing is saying, this is where we find that most companies want to invest in value. They want data scientists like yourselves. They want people that are in data science and computer engineering that are going to connect to their business. And they want insights over here. And they want it to just work as fast as it can. So let me tell you about some of the considerations that we have had to do as we go end to end in what we've delivered. So the first one I talked about over here was the data ingestion. So when we first started, as I mentioned, we had hired a lot of data scientists that were used to working on this. We had our CTO who had been with us forever in the data center business and had a great storage background and security. And so he sat down with the data scientists when they were talking about this and said, so how do you plan on getting the data that you want to work on? And they said, oh, well, maybe the customer will just open up their firewall and we'll get the data and away we go. That's not going to happen. They're not going to open up their firewall. There's too much security concerns. There's too many things going on. So what we ended up doing was developing a device with our own software, and it can be either a physical device or a virtualized instance of it. And it's based off of some of the same premises that your online data backup products have. And so what it does is it sets behind a customer's firewall, gives them complete control once we set it up with a web-based menu to be able to say, here's the time frames that I want to push data. And there are certain systems that they want to push every night, some that they want to push every hour, some that they want to push once a week. And what it does is it securely encrypts and creates a secure encryption key between just our platform and that device, wherever it's located in the world, to be able to send differential changes of data on a regular schedule. So that works all the way through to where now, once it's set up the first time, the data just flows onto the data lake. We also have had to create a whole lot of custom APIs for data transfer for things like Google BigQuery. Many of our customers use Google Analytics, and on the back end, the Google BigQuery access allows you to get to massive amounts of rich data that you can really do some very interesting things with. And then we've also had to do a whole lot with message brokers from the IoT side. So when you talk about bringing data in at scale, we work, as I mentioned, with companies. One of ours is a global appliance manufacturer where their machines, right now on an everyday basis, wherever you go in the country, these machines can be connected to a web app. They send about 6 to 8 signals per second. We get about 250 million rows of IoT data per day. That was about 150 million rows last month. It's going to be in the billions at this time next year. So bringing all that in and be able to do it in an automated fashion is something that we had to do, and we had to think about it being encrypted both at transit and at rest. Our workflow manager allows data scientists like yourself to automate the project workflows during the QA process and doing dynamic and elastic allocation of resources. So as I mentioned, I've said Hadoop a few times. We started with Hadoop. We do a whole lot in Hadoop, and Hadoop does what it does really, really well. But we also found there were some things that it didn't do well with the particular types of algorithms and work that we were doing. And that Docker and container-based storage could add a whole lot of value to that process. And so what we have done is written into our workflow manager the ability for the data scientists to be able to test different algorithms, different ways of working, see what storage and compute resources perform the best, and then you write the automated script to where now, as we're working on the output, it spools up the right appropriate amount of storage in the appropriate way with the appropriate compute resources, does the job it's supposed to do, and then transitions back down. It's a very efficient use and allocation of resources, and it puts the power in the hands of the data scientists to really automate and do the thing that's going to drive the most high value output on the other side. And so what's really good is it manages from the ingestion of the data to all the tasks all the way through. So once we get through, it's automated and it can just run again and again and again. The infrastructure, as I mentioned, what we decided was we needed to be storage agnostic. So whatever the most appropriate storage infrastructure was for the solution that we were designing, and that's where I said we learned a little bit about where Hadoop works best, where container and Docker works best. And so it was designed for maximum scalability, built with security in mind so that we can scale up or down as needed. And so our platforms are designed where they're either dedicated for a client instance or they're multi-tenant. This infrastructure side can scale appropriately, because what you don't know when you get into this is where you're going to start bumping your head. With some customers it's storage, but memory and compute are fine. On others it's way less storage than the other guy, but based off the type of algorithms, memory and compute start knocking heads with you, and that's where you need to scale. So we wanted that complete flexibility from the infrastructure side to be able to put the tools in the data scientist's hand. This is where you find that end-to-end process was valuable. So one of the things that we found when we got to the end was that if you go to Hadoop and Hive, it says, boy, Tableau works great. It connects right with Hive. You go to Hive and they'll tell you Tableau works great. You go to Tableau, it says it works wonderfully in between. It works, but doesn't create a great user experience all the time. So we had a particular project with the healthcare groups, a couple 100,000 rows of data. They were looking to filter different things on their output, and literally the team was coming in, hitting the first filter, and then they'd go make their morning coffee and come back as it would churn through. Not a real outstanding user experience. And so the acceleration layer, what we've been able to do, creates a columnar data store once the data set is done that takes SQL query, SAS, and more, and allows customers who may not have the experience with some of the Python or R or JavaScript or others to really interact with the data and the tools that they most like, and it really creates a rapid user interface to visualization tools that be able to drive that value, because you're thinking about all the way through to the end of the problem. And then the data flow manager allows you to use the best tools. It's agnostic to programming languages and techniques. This is where the calculations are done, and there's a lot of repeatable processes that our team can grab out of that. And the last one that I'll talk about is the data science lab, which is based off of the Jupyter notebooks we've done. So we try and provide a place here for data scientists to really utilize tools of their choice to explore at the data, to have the notebook capability to do repeatable tasks and automate predictive models. Because what we've really seen is that many of our models start off for a particular industry or a particular problem, but when designed in the right way are very applicable to another industry with a core baseline problem that is really heading in the same direction, but just different data on the input and the output. And this gives them a place to really explore. All of that, of course, has to be wrapped around security and compliance all the way through. And as you see this data governance, we spend a huge amount of time these days. And so while you are the data scientist who's been brought into an organization to solve a whole lot of problems, one of the biggest things that we have solved for customers that we have found is that most organizations have very disparate data. And so some of them that I just mentioned that have grown through acquisition might have 6, 7, 8 different ERP systems or electronic health record systems. And the challenge that the data scientists have quite often is I don't know what I don't know. There might be data that resides at another site that if I could combine it with the data that I know I have could be incredibly valuable to answering the question that I need. And so what we have done is in our workflow manager there, as we bring data in, we allow that to create almost that table of contents where now anybody, regardless on what your data governance standards are, is able to see that this type of data set does exist on the data lake. Now they can go ask permission for it and they can get to it, but at least now I've got a global center where everything is at. But that security and compliance is huge. I mean, we all see the breaches and the things that go on every single day. And so this is something that the amount of time that we invest in, not only on a global standpoint, but on a customer by customer standpoint. So hopefully what you're hearing out of this is that as we are trying to drive all the way to that end value, every one of these pieces in the chain has to play together very, very well. This is why our project teams consist of all those people that I talked about in the beginning, because if you're the data scientist, if you're not thinking about the business problem, if you don't have an understanding or somebody on your team that can help you drive the right infrastructure for what you're trying to do, or if you have the security and compliance person to make sure you don't get out of line with anything that your company standards have, in the end it's going to be a pretty short project. And so thinking about how you add value up and down that chain and understand how all those connect together is imperative to the success in your career at getting to true value from data analytics. So let's talk a little bit about how this all comes together. So now we've talked about how we set the stage for some of the things that we do. We've talked about how the technology drives it through. But I will tell you, there's a whole lot of fluff in analytics. There's a whole lot of people that talk and talk and talk, but very few get down to concrete. Here's where the measurable results are. And the more that you can get to measurable results, the more you differentiate yourself in your career and with the companies you're with. So I talked about our consumer side a little bit. So we had a cable broadband company. One of the things that we've learned out of this is the last thing cable companies want to sell you is cable. They don't make a whole near the money by licensing things to ESPN and others as they do selling the broadband and letting you choose the streaming service that you would like. So we have an organization that was multi-state, very large organization, tons of repeatable revenue customers, who their goal was to try and understand their customers and the potential customers that are most like their best ones. First thing they started off with is, we know we have some customers that are really, really good. I'm marketing to everybody right now with the same message at the same cost. How do I narrow that down to acquire the most high-value customers at the lowest acquisition costs? How do I market to those customers with a message that they're going to respond to via the method they most like to receive it? And at the same time, while everybody was being measured, what they were being measured by was net new customer growth. So if I added 10 new customers but 9 churned and left me, I really only added 1. So how can I reduce churn of existing customers with some of those challenges? And so when we started talking to them, they had a lot of rich data. Some of it we brought and added. Household data for the people that were their customers. Things about the property value, the tax bills, the year it was built, the serviceability. Is it a smart home? Is it an apartment? Where does it look at? From the location, what type of dwelling type, the census tract, the center, the township, the school district. Then you start to get into what type of client services are being used. What tiers of internet are coming up and down. Have they called in? Have they had billing transactions? Have they had customer services? Did they get discounts when they first signed on? Have they had many calls to customer service that have called out? Have they had to have tech issues? Then it became, do they interact with us on the website? Do they mainly call? What's their customer lifetime value? What's their Nielsen? But all of this was all over the place, and it was in very different sources. And so our view was, let's create an atom-based model around a single household that combined many of these things in. From there, it allowed us and our data scientists to start identifying for them not only who their most valuable customers are, but what were the attributes about those most valuable customers? What was the pathing of how they came in? Then it became, who in the market looks like the most valuable customers? How can I send to less to get more? This was a group that did a lot of direct mail. You still get to your house, you probably get Xfinity or Comcast or DirecTV, things in your mail, and that's pretty standard in that industry. And they were sending a lot of pieces. And so what we did was say, let's do this on a test. This is where I talked about starting small and growing big. What's the scalability side? So we picked a particular market. And we had a list and they had a list. And anybody that appeared on both lists went to their list. And then it became, we are going to send to these folks, and then we're going to send to them based off of what products they're likelihood to buy. And what we found is that the data-driven list outperformed mass by 76%. And on top of this, the data showed us that about at a 45% higher clip, we were able to predict and say what products they were going to actually purchase. And so what we've done out of that is now it's expanded into 4 states that every one of their marketing pieces, every one of their mailings, they use the likelihood. And so where before they might have been sending out 30,000 mailers, they may only be sending 20. But they're having a whole lot better hit rate. And what we're doing when I talk about it being a process and learning from that, as they are doing particular types of mailings, we're grabbing the data from that. So now it's not just send these houses the triple play that we used to do. Now they're able to do experiments. Send these houses the triple play, but let's send half of them a picture of a family playing outside and the other half a picture from HBO. And now let's see what the data does and what's the response rate and what does that mean and how do we narrow it down the next time to be even more targeted and even more granular and even more direct to particular groups. And so new customer acquisition for them has been a massive, massive, massive success. Yes?
Have you arrived at that graph from data segmentation? Can you explain that again?
Sure. So what we ended up doing, so we had the segmentation. So what we ended up doing in this process is now once we had the identifiers of each customer, okay, and we had the data points, a predictive model was written. And so we looked at the households that weren't customers compared to those that were, and we started to segment the points that matched up the most. And we scored every single household on the outside of likelihood. First off was likelihood to buy something, okay? Then it was likelihood of what product they were going to buy. And you reminded me of a great failure that we had the first time around. And this is important to know. So the very first time we did the test with them, it didn't go nearly as well as we hoped. And this is about 4 years ago. And what we had found was, what we had delivered to them, we hadn't explained it great, is step one on the checkbox was likelihood to buy something. Okay? And that created a list. Then you'd filter down into what products were they likely to buy. Well, we didn't explain that well. So they didn't filter out first the likelihood to buy something. They just went likelihood to buy. So it would kind of be like me asking you, at McDonald's, are you more likely to buy a hamburger, a quarter pounder, or fries? Give me you'd say fries. Okay, fries. How likely are you to go to McDonald's? Probably not very, right? The problem was, we just said, oh, she's likely to buy fries. We forgot about the part where she said, I'm not going to McDonald's anyway. But if you tell me I'm going to McDonald's. So step one now became filter down into who's likely to make a move, who's likely to buy from you. Then once we have this smaller universe, what are they likely to buy? So then it became more directed messages to them. So normally, and keep in mind, mass mailing, you generally get a 1.5%, 2% hit, 3%. You can see we are at about a 10% clip on response and actually buying something, which is huge in that kind of industry. But I mentioned, on the flip side, if customers are leaving, you really haven't got that same benefit. And so with this particular customer, we're out at their location, big call center. Here was this whole part of the room that all that group did was wait for somebody to call in mad. And then they had a certain amount of dollars that they could throw at them to try and keep them as a customer. And every dollar they spent came out of the marketing budget the next month. So marketing was saying, we'd much rather spend on growing the business. How do we keep these people from leaving? So similar to what I showed with the household value where we created this model, what we did is we did this same type of thing only around customers who had left them over the last 4 or 5 years. Really looking for interactions with call center or this or that happened in time. What happened in time frame up to somebody leaving? Was there anything that machine learning could help us do to be able to predict that somebody might be in the mode of leaving? And so in a very similar way, what we end up doing now is we bring all that data in. Every one of their customers gets a score every single day of their likelihood to leave them in the next 60 days. And that score changes daily based off interactions. And the model continues to learn and get better and better. We also have a score for them of high-value customers and likely to be high-value customers. So what they've said they're going to do is, wow, those people that are really good customers are likely to be, rather than waiting for them to call, why don't we pick up the phone and reach out to them? See if it makes any difference. So, in the same way we talked about doing a test first, and that was what we did. So churn was about 2%. Okay? So the first thing was, we took a group that we said, here's a group that's likely to churn. Okay? They didn't do anything. Does the model work? Well, the group that we said likely to churn churned at 7%, so about 3 times more likelihood. So the model's predicting at a very high rate. They took a group and said, okay, we're going to email them. Did that reduce churn? Not really. Did calling reduce, mailing? Not really. We're going to pick up the phone and call. They picked up the phone and called groups that were 3 to 4 times more likely to churn and reduced it all the way down to their norm. The churn reduction here in this slide has been updated many times. When you take the valuation on this, it's been about $11 million in value created, direct line, and about $33 million in value when you take the way the valuation of the customer was. And what's been really interesting about that one is that this is just about customer service, I guess, in our society today. People that they called, if I talk to you, you reduce that churn down to 2%. Even if I didn't talk to you, but I just left you a message on your phone that said, hey, I know you maybe have had a bad experience, or hey, we just want to let you know we care about you as a customer. If there's anything we can do to get better, please don't hesitate to call us. Even if they didn't speak to them, but they left a message, the churn is reduced at almost the same amount. Because they're talking to the right people at the right time about the right messages through data. Digital content, we do a lot, as I've mentioned, with Scripps and a lot of their TV stations, and part of it is when they have different ads that generate different amounts of revenue, what type of content that can be driven out into the marketplace that might go viral, that they should get to more of their stations in the right time. What we have done is essentially looked at virality of content that is helping them classify things as a single, double, triple, or home run in the marketplace. And it's now to the point to where any of their stations, once they put out a piece of content, within 2 hours, based off what's going on, we can predict what level that story is going to be at, so how much they should publicize that on their different sites to be able to maximize the ad revenue value in a near real-time basis within 2 hours of that. I mentioned the connected appliances. some of those at Whirlpool. So right now, any place in the country that you go, any Best Buy, and you buy a Whirlpool connected appliance, you can take it to your house, you can connect it to a web app, and it is beginning to send signals, 6 to 8 signals a second that come back to our data center in Indiana that we then have on our platform and work with Whirlpool to analyze. And there's been 2 main areas that we've been focusing on that. There's mainly an engineering kind of data set that is trying to reduce truck rolls and mean time to failure and experimentation, like does water hardness affect different parts going down? And then there's also been the marketing side of it, to be able to understand how people, what features are really being used, how are they interacting, how are they working on it? And the goal is to create the best consumer experience that they possibly can in the marketplace by offering the right features to the right person, helping them enable it, and at the same time reduce the amount of customer service calls, the amount of truck rolls. There's nothing more frustrating for an individual than your washer or dryer's out and I've taken a day off work, and then the tech shows up, and not only did they show up and you had to take a day off, but they say, hey, I know exactly what's wrong, but I don't have the part with me. I need to come back tomorrow. So how can we make sure the right part, based off what's likely to happen, is in the truck to be able to maximize that experience? So this is being combined with web data and others. This is why I said this is going to be in the billions of rows of data every single day. And it's being combined with all kinds of other sources to really drive insights. And where I talked about having the right parts when the truck goes out, one of the fun ones we've done with natural language processing is we're working with them, how do I make the truck not go out at all? So all of their call center data is being converted to text. And so what we've done is some clustering work to be able to look for clusters of words that are related to specific topics. So when these 2, 3, 4 words are said, it generally is meaning this. And so then we looked at when those clusters were happened, we had all the service tickets and how it was resolved. So what really happened there? And so now what we're working through is how can we make sure that we can serve that back up to the customer service person who's on the phone at the time, knowing that most of the time the problem this person's describing is just tightening up a hose on the back of the right side. And maybe they might be able to eliminate the truck and create a better customer experience because the algorithm is helping to reduce that maintenance and service cost by predicting the issue before it happens and being able to drive that through. So all of this is combined based off of, you don't get to these kind of insights without all the way through the security, the infrastructure to handle it, the way it comes through, the data engineer driving the right data set, the data scientist who's thinking about the way this can all come together, the business analyst saying here's how they can actually apply it. I mean, little things. I mean, you talk about understanding how the business works. So some of the calculations are to feed this back to somebody to do this, this increases the amount of time per call. Is that a good thing for them? Do they want to spend more time per call? That might mean that I have to add more employees. Does the cost of adding the more employees outweigh the cost of adding more truck rolls? All considerations that have to go into how you're going to take actionable insights off of this. And so in the end, where we start to measure stuff, as I've talked about, is 1 million digital leads that are going out that are being messaged via the channel that are resulting in 3 times sales, a 6.5 impact million to a reduction there. Data-driven acquisition of high-value customers increasing by 76%, a 40% savings on their cost to do it on-house a year ahead of schedule by being able to work. So these are the ways that we measure the benefits of analytics on the impacts of the customers that we are having. So in the end, what I hoped to be able to get across today was something that would give you value as you are thinking about the things that you're learning in the classroom right now and how they're going to apply at the next step. And with that next step being somebody who really thinks critically about the why of what you're doing, how it connects to the business or the society or the overall goal, using data for a common good. It is the most exciting time right now that you could ever imagine. The things that can be done with data that can impact communities and companies and people and society right now is beyond most of our imaginations. And you're on the front end of it, that you can really be part of something huge. You can really be part of something bigger than yourself, but you got to be thinking about it in a big way. And our organization is one that is looking for those type of critical thinkers, and so are many, many of the others out there. And as a very proud IU graduate, the more folks that we have that are touting that IU degree, that are adding massive value in the marketplace, the better. And so we do internships. We do look to grow our organization. info@onalytics.com is your best way to send in resumes or references for that. And I also put mine up there as well. And if I can be of help to anyone, I'd be happy to do so. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, that's it.
What position do you have for this in data field?
What
What positions
What types of positions? I'm going to take you back. So at the you were probably studying, so that's okay. So our organization right now continues to hire in, like almost all the way back. Oop, oop, boom. So infrastructure engineers that help manage all the way through. Our data engineers are the folks that really are trying to create the data sets, that are doing the joining, the linking, the programming to be able to bring those together. We do a lot of our own software development and UI, the business analysts. It says PhD level data scientists because that's what we have up to this point, but we know we're going to be limited if it's only PhD level, and what we're excited about are master's programs like you have here that are really churning out great talent that we want to be able to capitalize on, and then folks in security and compliance. So, is that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.